If your slaw turns into a watery mess after just 20 minutes, the problem isn't the dressing or even the type of cabbage. Instead, it's happening right here in the first step. Let me show you the fix. Every slaw recipe I know starts with a cabbage, and this one's no different. This is a standard white cabbage weighing in at just under a kilo. So I always ditch the outer 2 layers, you never know what they've touched. Then for one of the most awkward cuts out there, I need to cut this cabbage in half, ideally through the root section. There are a few ways to approach this, and I'll show you how I like to do it. So I start by getting it sitting on the stable part of the base, secure it with one hand, and gently rock my knife through until it's into the cabbage. Then hand on top, giving me much more stability, and rock my knife through all the way to the chopping board. This rocking of the knife is much safer than just applying lots of downward pressure. The more pressure I put in, the easier it is to slip, particularly with large, round, unstable things like cabbages. Now I have a stable, flat surface to work with, and this is much safer for me to make the rest of my cuts from here. At this stage, most chefs will get the mandolin out. I'm not the biggest fan of mandolins, particularly using them with cabbages. So I'm going to show you how I get this sliced with a knife, and this will work for any slaw. If you're thinking at this stage, this guy's chatting a lot of rubbish about cabbage, I get it. But these are the little 1% that help me to get the right textures and consistencies in the finished recipe. So importantly, starting at the root end of the cabbage, for reasons that will be clear in a moment, I'll just slice through the layers, taking my time and keeping the slices as consistent as possible. I'm not going for super thin. I actually prefer my cabbage slices a little thicker for things like coleslaw. The main thing here is consistent slices. Once you get to this stage, when it gets a little harder to keep the slices consistent, you should have this kind of pyramid shape to work with. The beauty of this is you have the choice of 2 flat cut, stable sides to flip onto. This makes continuing to get consistent size slices much easier. This brings me on to why I started the slices at the root end initially. If I was to start the other way around, then now at this stage, I wouldn't have a good option to flip onto a new stable flat side. This is one of those little details that you only really learn from chopping a lot of cabbage. Next is something I haven't seen anyone else do in any slaw recipes on the internet, and that's to wash the cabbage. As this is going to be eaten raw and cabbages grow on the ground, it's a good idea to wash it. And I'm using a salad spinner. I think they're great for things like this. So once a cabbage is all covered with water, I'm adding a generous amount of salt. This is going to kill any bugs or eggs living in the cabbage. And I'm just going to leave that to sit for 10 or 15 minutes. Occasionally giving it a little jiggle just to help any dirt get free and settle to the bottom. Some seemingly boring details, I know, but these are the little 1% that make a big difference. "15 minutes later and I'm ready for the next step. So I'm going to drain off the cabbage, give it a spin in the salad spinner to get it as dry as possible. Then keeping it in the basket, I'm salting it quite liberally, but not so much that it's going to be like a sauerkraut. So here I went with around 5 pinches of a coarse sea salt. Then giving it a really good mix. I like to really get in there and be a little forceful with the cabbage slices. This is going to help speed up this quick brining process. For me, this is the most important step of making any cabbage-based salad, is giving the cabbage time to release some of its water content and letting the salt help speed that up. This is the difference between a soggy, underwhelming coleslaw and a fantastic one. And this helps to tame and soften the woody texture of raw cabbage. So this simple step is solving 2 of the biggest problems that everyone faces when making coleslaw. I'm going to leave that to sit on the side anywhere between an hour and a few hours. Right, okay then, cabbage time. This has had about an hour and a half. It's wilted slightly in appearance. The texture is still crunchy, but it's lost that raw edge. It's slightly softer than raw cabbage, basically. Not a lot of liquid has come out of it, only a little bit. But that's enough to make a soggy coleslaw, so let's move on to the next step. From here, I could just turn this into a standard coleslaw by adding some thinly sliced carrots, onion, mayonnaise, and a little vinegar. But I want to show you a couple of different options. So from here, everything comes together in a matter of minutes. I'm starting by grating an apple. This is a Granny Smith. You just want something tart and fresh with a good firm texture. I'm following that with half of the sliced cabbage, the leaves from 6 stems of fresh dill. Dill is such a fragile herb, I just like to pick the prongs off and pull them apart with my fingers and put them straight into the salad. I don't like to chop them with a knife or anything. I'm following that with a few cranks of cracked black pepper, around 50 ml of an extra virgin olive oil, the juice of 1 lemon, and a heaped teaspoon of sugar. This is optional. It does help to balance the acidity of the lemon juice. The idea is not for the slaw to be sweet though. Then I'm just going to give everything a good mix, making sure the apple and dill are evenly distributed. And that's a really interesting but simple apple and dill slaw. Some of my Polish friends will recognise this as... Sorry, I can't pronounce that. Probably just without the olive oil though, but let me know in the comments down below. It's fresh, it's vibrant, the cabbage is crisp without being woody, it's not soggy, and it's full of flavour. This is a great bowl of slaw. On to the next recipe. The next one is from a totally different side of the world, Vietnam, and this one rewrites the rulebook. So, the other half of the cabbage into a mixing bowl. Then I'm adding 2 red chilies that I thinly sliced, half of a brown onion that I also thinly sliced, a handful of coriander leaves, and a handful of mint leaves. And I'm just going to pick them apart straight into the salad, just like I did a moment ago with the dill. Then I've got a cooked chicken breast that I've pulled into little strands so they're around the same size as the pieces of cabbage. Lastly, into the bowl, the dressing. This is what ties the whole salad together and makes it extra special. To prepare this dressing, I zested the peel from 1 whole lime. Followed that with the juice from that lime, then grated in 1 small clove of garlic, 80 ml of rice wine vinegar, 30 ml of fish sauce. If you don't have or like fish sauce, then you can just use a light soy sauce instead. And to finish it off and pull everything into balance, 2 tablespoons of sugar. I just gave that a good mix and that's that. It's packed full of flavour and really simple. So I'm just giving everything a very good mix, getting everything evenly distributed, getting that dressing coating every last ingredient in that bowl. I'm using tongs this time for 2 reasons. I don't want the smell of fish sauce on my hands, and I don't want the heat from the chilies getting under my fingernails. I really don't like mixing with tongs though. If you know my videos, I'm a hands man. That is 1 fresh, fragrant cabbage-based salad, taking things in a totally different direction with the addition of things like chicken. As one last finishing touch, I'm adding some crushed toasted peanuts. They will bring another texture and flavour to this party in a bowl. There's no other way to describe it. Crispy shallots are a traditional ingredient to use instead of the toasted peanuts, but both work amazing. So that's 2 of my favourite slaw recipes that I turn to in the summer months. They're exciting, flavourful, and a bit different from your standard bowl of coleslaw. If you enjoyed this video, then I know you'll like this one as well, so go check it out next.